Hey kiddos, welcome to Chocolate Touch. I'm super excited for you guys to read this story. It's such a good book. So before we start, we're going to get a little background knowledge of when this book was written, who it was written by, because it's really important that you understand the book was not written for today. It was written a while ago. And so things in the book will be a little bit different than what we're used to. So the first thing that I want you to know is that it was written in 1952. So how many years ago was that? 1952. Well, it was 69 years ago, which is insane. So this book was written 69 years ago and things were a lot different than they are today. Our author of this book, his name is Patrick Skene Catling. So he's the author. Who wrote the book there. And it was inspired by the story of King Midas, which we read yesterday. He took that story and he was inspired to write his own story that was loosely based on King Midas. So let's talk about the 1950s in America. What was it like in the 1950s? Well, this is kind of what it looked like. Those were the cars, those were the houses. You had a lot of ranch-style houses, meaning one-story homes. This is another picture of what was happening in the 1950s. If you know who this man was, this is Elvis Presley, a huge rock star in the 1950s. He was quite controversial, though, because his type of music really hadn't been played before. So either people loved him or they didn't, but he was very popular in the 1950s. Diners were hugely popular in the 1950s, so if you wanted to go out to dinner, you probably went to the local diner. This is kind of what it would look like. A lot of times you would have had hamburgers and fries, milkshakes, those kind of things were very popular at a diner. We still have diners today, but they're not near as popular as what they were in the 1950s. These are some kiddos in the 1950s, so you can notice their dress. They also have bicycles, and those bicycles have kind of come back now, so you can buy bicycles that look like that. But notice the little girls' longer pants. That was something little girls would typically wear in the 1950s. So those are kiddos about your age and a little bit younger. So these are relatively new inventions in the 1950s. Ovens and washers and dryers were relatively new in the 1950s. So people during this time were just getting those things. Now, if you were a girl back then, you would have probably stayed home when you got married. You didn't work. You were a stay-at-home mom, so you would have needed these appliances to help you in your daily life. This is another picture of the 1950s in America. Again, notice all of the homes are ranch-style homes, meaning one story. It's kind of interesting that the colors that were used back in the 1950s. But again, that is subdivisions were just becoming popular in the 1950s. This is a radio. So most people in the 1950s did not have television, but everyone would have probably had a radio at that time. So instead of watching a show on TV, you listened to your favorite show on the radio. Also, it was very customary for a president to give an address every week, and so you would listen to that on the radio as well, because you couldn't really watch the news. If you wanted to learn about what was happening, you had to read the newspaper. So radios were a huge thing in the 1950s. Now people did start to get televisions later in the 1950s, but they would have been black and white. They also would have been much tinier than we're used to these days. So you can see there that families are around their television because it's probably the first television their family has ever owned. All right, so now we're going to be talking about some of the words that will be in Chapter 1 of Chocolate Touch. So this first word is brigand. Say brigand. So what is a brigand? Well, a brigand is a member of a gang or they're robbers. So this is what it might look like if they are a brigand. Okay, so brigands, again, will be mentioned in Chapter 1, and they're a member of a gang or robbers. Your next word is trumpet. Say trumpet. A trumpet is a musical instrument that's played with a mouthpiece. So this is what it would look like. You blow into the end here. This is called a mouthpiece. And when you blow, it makes a sound. You can change the sound by pushing on these levers here. This is actually called a spit valve. You open that up, and because your trumpet, when you blow, you naturally blow spit. You have to blow out the spit, otherwise it'll make it make a weird sound. So our main character will have a trumpet in this book. So say trumpet one more time. All right, kiddos. This word is toffee. Say toffee. Very good. Yes, it does rhyme with coffee, but they are very different. Toffee is a type of candy that's made from sugar and butter. And you've probably had toffee before. This is kind of what it looks like. Now, this toffee was layered with chocolate. It's a harder candy because when you melt sugar and butter and then it hardens up, it does become crunchy. Okay, so that is toffee. All right, your next one is black currant lozenges. Say that. Black currant lozenges. Those are a type of candy that was used to help sore throats. Now, we wouldn't say black currant lozenges. We would say, get me a cough drop. Okay, so in the 1950s, if you had a sore throat, you wouldn't say, get me a cough drop. You would say, get me a lozenge. So this is what it looked like. It was more like a black licorice type of flavor there. And that, again, is just like our medicine that we use today when we have a sore throat. All right, kiddos, say maroon glaces. Very good. Maroon glaces are a candy from France that's made with chestnuts and sugar. So this is what they look like. So again, I've never tried one of these before. They do come from France, and they're made with chestnuts and sugar. So a chestnut looks like this back here before it's cooked, and it's a hard nut, just like a peanut that we're used to here. And then it softens up when it's cooked and placed with sugar. So again, those are maroon glaces, and those are from France. All right, our last word for today is complications. Say complications. Complications is just something that goes wrong. That could be anything. Maybe you're in surgery and you have complications, and that means that something went wrong during surgery. Maybe you had a complication on your math test. Something went wrong during your math test. So you can have complications anytime, and all it means is that something went wrong. All right, kiddos, I hope you enjoy reading Chapter 1 in Chocolate Touch. We'll see you tomorrow.